Welcome to Smart Women Talk. This is your host, Katana Abbott. I'm a midlife millionaire coach and a certified financial planner, and I search the world for smart women and a few good men, including best-selling authors and thought leaders who are on that leading edge. So join us for conversations on money, business, health, and inspiration, so you can live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Smart Women Talk. This is Katana Abbott. This month, we have been focused on this idea of the food controversy and what to eat. If you're on social media, you've probably been bombarded with all kinds of promotions on both the carnivore diet, the keto diet, as well as the benefits of eating more plant-based foods. It can be very confusing for sure. And I really believe it's more complex than just picking one or the other. But I also believe that eating more plants, especially organic, is smart. So to learn more about eating more plants, I've invited Master Certified Vegan Lifestyle Coach, Vicki Brett-Gach, to share her wisdom on why eating more plants is a good idea for your health, which plants are most nutritious, and where to begin when you're trying to eat more plants. Vicki is a plant-based culinary instructor. She is a certified personal chef and the author of Plant-Based for Life Cookbook. So welcome, Vicki. I'm so excited to have you here to talk about what to eat, why and how to eat more plant-based.
Thank you so much, Katana. I'm so happy to be with you. And this is my favorite topic, so I'm excited to share with your audience as well.
And I love the fact that you're in your kitchen. And is this your office?
I do have an office that's separate, but I spend a lot of time in here, and I think of it as my studio because I am a recipe creator, and this is where I do my work. And then the less glamorous part of cleanup and a lot of brainstorming happens right here. So yes, this is where I get a lot of work done for sure.
I bet. And it's a nice looking kitchen too. It looks like a great place to work.
Thank you. It's full. It's got stuff everywhere and I use it all. It feels a lot like a studio. My background originally years ago was in painting. And so it does remind me of a painting studio where I have all my flavors instead of paint colors available to play with, my equipment, my spices and stuff like that. So yeah, get a lot of fun stuff done.
Yeah, I do love that. Why don't you, for our listeners and those watching on YouTube who are real lucky because they get to see us, right?
Right.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and how did you get started in this?
I am a recipe creator and I am a blogger. I've been blogging and sharing recipes at AnnArborVeganKitchen.com since 2012. I am also, as you mentioned, a certified personal chef. So I do some work with clients, less of that right now because I just don't have time. I'm also a plant-based culinary instructor, and I have the opportunity to teach people in my own kitchen, often groups, team meetings, things like that, but also a lot of work remotely where I help people who are not in the area throughout the country, groups of all sizes, to learn how to begin to add more plants to their diet. And I'm also a coach, as you mentioned. And that's most of the work that I do is coaching people who are transitioning from eating maybe what's making them sick to where they want to be. And so it's one step at a time, one plate at a time, one forkful at a time of healthy food that makes people feel better today and tomorrow. And so that's what I do is help people along all those stages of figuring out what is better for them to consume so that they will feel better and how to maintain it. And so people, there's some universal struggles that I've come across because some people it's just super easy. They just change to a plant-based diet. Most people find some obstacles in the way. I wasn't raised plant-based, and I know that for me, it was a little bit of a struggle to know what's on my plate if it's not roasted chicken or something that's the way I grew up with just meat-based meals. And also, I had 2 children and a husband who were used to the way I was originally cooking for them. And so the transition for them made the struggle a little bit tougher still in some ways of transitioning, because I had to also convince them that this was going to taste good and that they were going to feel great and they wouldn't feel like they're missing anything. So I learned along the way that there are some struggles. I understand the struggles and challenges that many people face as they're trying to improve their diet, not quite sure how, and not sure what to do about some things that they're concerned about. So a lot of times it's social, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but a lot of times it's just not having the support system they need. A lot of times it's just knowledge or comfort with what choices will be good for me. And so there's all kinds of things in between. What do I do if I travel? What do I do if I go to a restaurant? What do I do when my friends are gathering for pizza and I'm not sure what to do? What do I do if I have cravings? So many things. But I found that there's some universal ones that come up very commonly for people transitioning to eat more plants. And so I have found that it's my life's work to help people find a healthier way to eat. And so, yeah, I feel like it's my mission, and I'm here to help people find what makes them feel good.
So how long, you said something about 2012. How long have you been vegan and had to do this transition? And were you a carnivore before? Were you eating meat and all that? And how were you raised?
Yeah. And I was raised like so many people of my generation with a family eating the traditional American diet. So yeah, bacon and eggs for breakfast. That's what my mom thought was a great breakfast. Dinner was a pot roast or meatloaf or chicken or whatever, those kinds of things, mashed potatoes and maybe a canned vegetable or something like that. That's how I was raised. And my mom was a good cook, but I don't describe it necessarily in the way that gives her enough due. But she was a good cook and a great baker, and I learned a lot from her. But along the way, she became unhealthy. And so I was raised with a mother who was ill a good portion of her life. I think I was about 11 years old. I'm the youngest of 3 kids. And I was about 11 when my mom was diagnosed with diabetes. Now, she had been smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day, and she suffered a mild stroke that put her in the hospital. They discovered that she was diabetic at that time, had extremely high blood pressure. She used to drink Coca-Colas like they were going out of style and smoke. Like that's an early memory of mine of her. She went cold turkey, excuse the expression, cold tofu, and gave all of that up, stopped smoking, stopped eating a lot of food that wasn't good for her, and tried to switch to a healthier diet and did the best she could for many years. But eventually she did develop some complications from being diabetic, and she had some heart problems, some kidney problems, neuropathy, angina, just a lot of problems. And I lost her when she was 80 years old. Mm-hmm. Now, I just turned 70, so it's really on my radar, and it has been for decades, what the impact of nutrition on our health. And I know that my mom was doing the best she could. She thought she was making good choices when she used margarine instead of butter or bought low-fat dairy products instead of non-dairy. And growing up, I never even heard the word vegan.
To eat. They tell us to eat those kind of things, like the low-fat, with a lot of these diets. But she still lived a long life. But I see that the quality at the end wasn't there.
That's exactly right. She was able to manage, and as I say, but she spent a lot of time going to doctor's appointments and had just massive amounts of medication that she was always figuring out how to take and work around, and having side effects and taking medication for side effects. And it just really impacted the quality of her life. And that's exactly right. So she lived with illness for a long time. And I think maybe it's our goal when we think about it to live a nice long life. You understand that idea of living a nice long life, but also making sure that we have a life during those years and minimize the decline that many of us can expect, but at least not have it stretch out. And also, I will say there's no guarantees. I'm not a doctor. All I can do is say that from what I know and from what I've seen and from what I've read and the people whose work I follow, we can at least do the best we can to reduce the risk of some of the things that are in our family history. And that was really what raised my awareness, was the family history I was facing as my brother and sister, who are older than me, started to flirt with some of these same problems my mom had. I could see what was on deck for me if I followed the same path. And so I started reading and started researching and came upon many different pioneers in the plant-based field who have created for us a wonderful path to follow of understanding the association between animal products that we eat and are taught to eat and developing chronic illness. And they've done research that shows people in different parts of the world where there's no McDonald's and there's not a lot of fast food. People are eating what's grown on their farm and eating very simply. That these are areas where the common diseases we have in our communities are just less present, and in some cases not there at all. So much less risk of cancer, heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, all kinds of things, as well as autoimmune issues that many people are faced with these days. The more I learned, the more I wanted to learn. And so I've gone back for a lot of additional certifications and in wellness counseling, in culinary coaching, and plant-based nutrition, and just lots of things.
Dr. Fasano at Harvard Medical School is actually teaching now the young med students going through become doctors. He's teaching that all disease begins in the leaky gut. So this is all new, but they're going to be coming out instead of with 1 week, is it 1 week of education on health and eating and food, nutrition, I should say. They're coming out with this kind of education. So hopefully, especially starting there, hopefully the whole thing can change, because the medical doctors, when you go in for treatment, they're treating the symptoms and they're not getting to the cause, and they're not teaching about food. I just was in with my doctor and I asked, should I watch what I eat? And he's like, oh, the liver and the kidneys are going to filter all that out. Don't worry about it.
It's such an interesting point. I just completed a 10-part series on inflammation where everything comes back to exactly what you said, our microbiome and leaky gut and all of these things that are related to what we eat, which raises inflammation, which changes every part of how we respond to everything. And what can happen when the liver is overloaded because we have inflammation and because we're asking too much of it, and all of these really interesting things. And Dr. John McDougall, I'm certified, Starch Solutions certified through his program as well. He's in California and very well thought of. He talks about the fact that the food that we eat creates what he calls food poisoning. It's a variety of food poisoning. It's just not as immediate. If you've eaten some bad shrimp, not a couple hours later, this may take 10 years or 20 years or longer before we might see some results in our body that are the long-term results of a long series of choices that led to our bodies just being overwhelmed with food that it doesn't know how to process. So it's very similar, slightly different take on the same concept of what we eat matters. And I think sometimes it's hard to connect the dots between how we feel and what we've eaten, because no one has taught us to do that, to make that connection. But when you begin to notice that one kind of food agrees with us, gives us energy, or maybe gives us the opposite, we feel foggy or sluggish or have a stomach ache or feel bloated, or all the different ways that we might respond, that this is our body telling us something.
And one example, Vicki, is that I've always felt I can eat pretty much anything I want. And then I realized that I can't eat gluten. And so I know that food can affect us. The other thing I notice is I love dairy, really good cheese. So I'm eating the better dairy products, but this is my question for you. I notice now, because I cut it out for a long time with none, and then now when I eat dairy, I get stuffy nose. And I'm realizing, oh my gosh, I think it might just be the dairy. Can you talk about that?
That's a great observation. And that sensitivity to a response to food is so interesting. And I will say that I identify so much with what you said, because cheese was the last thing I gave up along my journey. So I've been vegan for about 15 years. I think you asked that earlier. Yeah. I forgot to answer that one. But cheese took me a little longer in that journey. So I was eating meat originally, again, before I became vegan. Then I reduced to just pretty much salmon on my Caesar salad with Parmesan cheese, that kind of thing. But I was eating cheese 3 times a day, all the way up to the point that I became vegan. I turned vegan, and that first year or so, I slipped off my own wagon a few times when I'd see we'd have pizza night with our in-laws or whatever. Like every once in a while, I'd go weeks and maybe months, and then I would slip and I'd have a few pieces of pizza. And I thought, well, I've already had pizza. I may as well have some ice cream now. But I will say that I made those choices back when I was eating cheese to eat the very best cheese.
Right.
It was the best Parmesan. I loved white cheddar. It was Purano. I loved, there's many that I loved. My husband used to call me a cheeseaholic. I had it 3 times a day. So eventually I gave that up. But part of what helped me give it up was making that association with feeling stuffy, because it is mucus producing. And it's part about the way our body is responding. The animal products we respond to, because it's so much like our own tissue, that we begin to respond and rebel against it. So it's difficult, but cheese is particularly addictive, literally. Mm-hmm. There's a book called The Cheese Trap by Dr. Neil Barnard that's extremely interesting, because the cheese trap talks about how, and there are many other resources on this, but this particularly about cheese, that it is literally addictive. Cheese creates in our brain casomorphins, which are similar to the way we respond to morphine. It's a low dose of it, but it is addictive. And dairy products are built to bring back the baby to the mother, and that bond, it is literally addicting and then very soothing. So we love it. And there's a reason that we feel like we want it. We crave it so much. That one might be a little trickier of all the choices that we're talking about to get to. But I think it's worth it, because that, of all the things that we've mentioned, is the hardest on the kidneys. And so if we can reduce the cheese intake to closer to none, you'll find that it's actually better for your kidneys, because it's a really high acidic load.
Wow. Yeah. And so what if we are trying to have a more alkaline system? I know that things like the cheese and the meats are going to be more acidic. I'd like you to talk just a little bit about this acid and alkaline. And then I also want to get to this idea of what is a whole food plant diet? Is that important to us?
And so the answer is yes. Our bodies are actually, when you said something before that kind of reminded me of this, I think that our bodies can be very resilient in at least our earlier years. Many of us are blessed with some amount of luck with our health in the earlier years. As we get a little bit older, very often we expect to get ill, but we don't have to. It doesn't have to be that way. We can take a little bit more proactive control. But the way to do that is what we eat. It's our fuel. It's if you gave your guests the wrong kind of gasoline to your car. It's what's making our cells, literally. We have to feed our cells what our body needs. And our brains run on carbohydrates, run on the good kind. So I'm not saying go eat a donut. I'm not. I'm saying eat an apple, eat a salad, because these are naturally the right pH for our system. And it's not that we can't eat some amount of meat or dairy products in our bodies. Many of us can be resilient enough to process it. A smaller amount, probably more easily than a large amount. But if we eat none, we are asking our bodies to be in their best high gear, giving us more energy, making us want to jump out of bed in the morning, giving us our best creative boost, making us feel exercising, making us sleep better, all kinds of great things. And all of this comes from the nutrients we're getting from the plants, the fiber we're getting from the plants, because an animal-based proteins and dairy do not have any fiber at all. And we need that fiber, and that's what helps our microbiome. And one thing leads to the other, and all of these have the same kind of answer. The most nutritious foods on the planet are greens and beans and all of these other plant foods we're talking about, but particularly greens and beans. So I always am thinking, how can we get more greens and beans into our diet?
So you're talking about eating all these plants. Does it matter if we buy organic or non-GMO?
I think that for those people who can afford it and have access to organic, it's a great choice. Some of us may be more sensitive to it than others, but I think whenever you can get organic, it's a great idea. I personally get organic vegetables and fruits whenever I can, if they look good. but I make a point of getting only organic and non-GMO soy products, corn. I make a point whenever I can of only buying apples, grapes, all the things that are on the Dirty Dozen. And I have to admit, I haven't seen the most recent list, but I always
like, what is the Dirty Dozen? You don't have to name them all for sure, but just to give us an idea and what that actually means.
There's a nonprofit that rates every year the cleanest and the dirtiest of the common produce, and saying for us to keep in mind, if our food budget can allow, go ahead and buy organic only of apples, celery, spinach, certain things. You can Google it. It changes every year. There is a list of the most important 12 foods or so, sometimes it's 13, to make sure you try to get organic when you can. And maybe that means spinach, as an example, might be frozen spinach, might be available organic, but maybe not fresh where you shop. So where you can, to include those choices in your diet. And then it also includes, for our happiness and feel a little bit less concerned, the 12 that are least important to get that way. And usually it's the foods like bananas and avocados and things with a thick skin that we don't eat the outside anyway, because we're talking about the pesticides. Things with a thick skin, a pineapple or something like that, may be less important to make sure it's organic. But I always think organic's important when you can, and GMO is important when you can, to avoid GMOs. But on the other hand, don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. Still, make your shopping cart, because that's where good health starts, at least 50% produce, because plants is what our body needs.
So talk a little bit then about this idea of being vegetarian versus vegan. And if someone is really a carnivore and they eat meat pretty much every day, how do they go cold turkey? Do you suggest that they transition if they really want to start moving in that direction?
Really great questions. And I think that it does come down to some personal choice, because we are all at a different point on our journey. And it's important to understand, I think, at least get information so you know what you're making good choices based on good information. And if you can include more plants in your diet, that's a great place to start. I'm not here to tell you don't eat meat. That's up to you. I will say that the National Institute of Health, they state you can reduce your risk of chronic disease, high blood pressure. I just made a quick note of this. All kinds of chronic diseases improve your outcome. Blood pressure, glucose for people suffering with either prediabetes or diabetes, reduce your risk of obesity, and manage your weight, all kinds of things, plus several cancers and maybe other things I didn't mention, but certainly heart disease. The most common chronic illnesses that our civilizations face all improve the outcomes and reduce the risk by switching to a plant-based diet. And so if you're not all the way willing to go on the spectrum to all the way plant-based, you're all the way here, mostly eating meat, move where you feel comfortable now. And then maybe with an eye on improving a little bit at a time. My husband uses an expression of the dimmer switch. Maybe you want to make some incremental changes and see what suits you best, with an eye toward continual improvement. And maybe you're willing to jump all the way in because, and often this is the case for a lot of clients that I work with, who have been given a cautionary moment with their doctor saying, you either are going to go on this medication or you have to go on a plant-based diet. And not all doctors share this information. I know many patients are willing to take medication and maybe don't even know there's an alternative. But by being given a choice to understand all of this information, I think many people would be willing to make a change in their diet if only they knew how. And that's where cookbooks, blogs, Ann Arbor Vegan Kitchen, there's millions out there. But I've been sharing my recipes with people for over a decade, and there's lots and lots of resources out there, but all you have to do is want to know more, and there's lots of information available.
Tell us a little bit about your cookbook. Do you have things like recipes for all different types of meals, and also how to make the salad dressings?
I sure do. So the first 50 pages or so of my book is about the difference between vegan and plant-based, which maybe we'll have a chance to discuss. But it also talks about, if you're on a limited budget, which foods should you get to get the most bang for your buck? How do you reset your pantry? What equipment is most valuable? Which things could you think about when your budget allows? Also, just what do I do if I'm concerned about this or this? So some obstacles to help you through. And then also how to eat more leafy greens, 6 or 7 ways to eat more leafy greens, because we talk about the value of that. And then I get into the recipes. There's over 100 recipes in here. And each one of them has a full page photograph, like this one, which is a tofu power scramble. And I have a breakfast section. You're looking at my blueberry topped cinnamon pancakes and all kinds of wonderful things, potatoes and muffins and oatmeal and things like that. So we're looking at the breakfast section. Then we get into a salad section. And so I'll just hit that for you here. So here's our salads, and the one that's on the cover, which is my rainbow harvest salad. I've got a Caesar salad in here. This is my buttermilk ranch dressing salad over simple greens, which is one I make every week in my own kitchen. These are the recipes I make myself. They're all really easy. These are the things I teach my students. This is a potato salad. We've got coleslaws. We've got salad in a jar, which is very portable to take with you to work. Here's another one, which is a really fun recipe.
How old are your kids? Are they young enough to take a lunch to school, or?
They were, not anymore. My daughter is about to turn 30 and my son is 32. Yeah. So here's one that I call a beet Caesar dressing over a salad that has some barbecue tempeh in it. So it's really delicious. And so anyway, you're getting the idea. I've got a burgers section with delicious burgers.
With summer coming up for everybody, having the opportunity to make vegan burgers would be very cool.
Absolutely. And I make those regularly in my own kitchen. And I will say all of my recipes are gluten-free. They're all sugar-free and they're all oil-free. So they're all really easy for people of all eating persuasions to add to their diet. And there's just 5 or 6 ingredients here. These are my banana monkey bars, all kinds of fun stuff. So 100 recipes available on my website. It's called the Plant-Based for Life Cookbook. And the subtitle is Deliciously Simple Recipes to Nourish, Comfort, Energize, and Renew. And it's also available on Amazon.
Oh, that's wonderful. And then how do people connect with you?
So Ann Arbor Vegan Kitchen, Ann Arbor like the city, AnnArborVeganKitchen.com is my website. And I also have on there a recipe blog, a page about my coaching, a page about the classes that I offer, and a page that is a shop page. So you can see some of the batch cooking courses that I offer, my cookbooks for sale, my new ebook, and also a contact page. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. Subscribe to my mailing list for free, of course, and then you'll get my new recipes as soon as they are published, and keep up to date with me anywhere I might be appearing and things like that as well. And I'm also on Facebook as Ann Arbor Vegan Kitchen, on Instagram as A2 Vegan Kitchen, and on YouTube as Ann Arbor Vegan Kitchen as well.
Okay, and for those that are not in Michigan, A2 is Ann Arbor, and a lot of people are familiar with University of Michigan, so that's AA is Ann Arbor. Wonderful, Vicki. It's been fantastic having you here. So much fun. I think a lot of people will be motivated and have more questions. I'm sure they'll circle back with you. I want to thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. And if you enjoy this type of show and you want to get on our list and also get access to all the great articles and courses that we offer at Smart Women's Empowerment, please join our list. Just go to joinsmartwomen.com. And when you do, you'll receive our monthly theme-based easing and be invited to the Smart Women Academy with classes and different resources. So until our next show, go out and live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity. Smart Women Talk is brought to you by Smart Women's Empowerment, a 501c3 nonprofit project of United Charitable. Music by Bill Lucas from his album When It Rains. Available on Apple Music and Spotify. Catch us wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, and be sure to join our free community at joinsmartwomen.com to access all our free Smart Women resources.